Continuing in the development of our website, in this lesson we're going to insert this middle banner. I call this the ID banner. And we're going to set up the styles for this left-hand side. What we're going towards at this point is we're going towards creating our template that we'll use for creating the rest of the site. So we're not going to put content in here, but we are going to set up the main styles for it. And then in the next lesson, we'll do the sidebar. Here in the text editor, we have the beginning.html and beginning.css from the 05 layout left folder in your exercise files. So we'll go ahead and start with our save as, and we're going to call this one template.html because that's what we're going to end up with at the end of these few lessons here. And in the CSS, we'll go ahead and save as main.css. And we'll start by putting in the XHTML. This is the simple part. And under the header, I'm going to go ahead and make a div for the middle banner. Close the div. And a div for the content. Go ahead and make a comment for that one. There will be some distance there, and a div for the main content. So that's the left column is the main content. And we'll just put in some default text here. For use in our template. And so I'm going to indent this a little bit. I'm using a feature in my editor that will indent a block of code for me. Most good editors have something like this. In this editor, it's the tab key, so I can tab over and it'll indent, and I can shift tab and it'll move back. I like to indent things in my code so that I can tell what is related to what. And so I find that to be a useful practice. All right. And now let's go ahead and position this using the CSS. Scroll down here to the bottom and create a new section with a comment. All right. Myself a little space to work, and so that selects the main content ID selector, and this is going to float left, and we'll have a width of 430 pixels and a margin of 0 and a padding of 0 on the top and bottom, and 15 pixels on the left and right. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, and what my reasoning is on setting this up this way. And then main content, P, and this will be our default paragraph style for everything within the left-hand column. Font family is Georgia and serif. So it'll use the Georgia font if that's available. Otherwise, it'll pick the default serif font, which is usually a Times Roman looking thing. Font size is 0.9 em. Line height is 1.4 em. Color is black. And margin is 1x and 0. So that's up and down. The top and the bottom margins will be 1x, and the left and right will be 0. And so what we're doing here is we're using this padding from the main content div, this padding on the right and left of 15 pixels. We're using that in place of margins in the paragraph. My reasoning there is that as we set up other elements like heading elements and things like that, We also give them a 0 margin, especially on the left, and they will line up perfectly every time. This just is an easy little shortcut to having your margins look right on the page. So I'm using the padding of the outer content box to set up what looks like a margin for the text elements. It's a little trick I do, and I find that it works very, very well. So I'm going to set up my heading elements. I'll go ahead and use my copy and paste feature here to duplicate that a few times so I don't have to type it over and over and over. And there's our 1 through 4 heading levels. And they'll have a font family of Trebuchet MS Sans Serif. And so that'll use Trebuchet MS if it's available on the client system, and otherwise it'll pick the default sans serif font. And now finally I'm going to set up the header elements. And these are just from what I know I'm going to need. So the H1 is going to have a font size of 1.6M, font weight of bold, of course. This is our main headings. Color is 1B9D95, and these colors were picked for me by the designers. Margin, and that often happens. The designers will pick colors for you. It's a good thing too. Programmers should not be allowed to pick colors. Bad things happen when programmers pick the colors. I'm kidding, of course, because like most programmers, I consider myself a designer. And here's our H2 element. Font size 1.2M, color 3C3809. Actually, I'm very impressed with the design of this site. I like it very much. Margin 0.4x and 0. So here in both of these cases, you'll notice that our margins, top, right, bottom, and left. So the right and the left here is 0. And in this case, the top and bottom is the 4x, and the right and left is 0. And so that's just going to make these heading levels all line up perfectly on the left-hand side with this padding from the outer div. I've got one more to do here, which is the main content H4. I'm just going to copy and paste this one and change it a little bit. So this will be H4. The font size is 1.1M. And the color is gray. The font weight will be bold. And the margin is 1x on the top, 0 on the right, minus 0.2ex on the bottom, and 0 on the left. Get rid of this extra semicolon there. It shouldn't hurt anything, but it's messy. Save that. So that sets up our styles for the left column content on our website. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we've got so far here. Go ahead and drag this template.html into our browser, and there we have it. Now you'll notice that the background here is still gray. What's happened is that our main content box did not extend out over the text here. And the reason for that is that this is a floating block. And so what we have to do is a little trick to get that main content box to extend out so that we have the white background. There's a couple of things that will happen as a result of that. One is that the left and right columns will both extend to the same length. We want them both to extend to the same place. So here's the trick. This works really well, and you'll run into this whenever you're using floating columns, is that at the end of this outer content box, and this is part of the reason for this outer content box, we're going to put in a paragraph. It's going to be an empty paragraph. It'll be like that, and it'll have a class equals clear. And so I'm going to create a class now in the CSS. You'll see what I mean when I do this. I'm going to create a little section here that'll go at the bottom. Call it, my favorite words, miscellaneous styles. fun to say and fun to spell. Dot clear, clear both. And so all this style does is it clears floating objects at the bottom. And that's what this is for, and we're going to use it actually just the once in this document. And there it is. So we have an empty paragraph. See, we're using this XHTML shortcut for an empty element, and class equals clear. So all this does is it creates that anchor at the bottom of the floating objects. So we'll go ahead and reload now, and voila. Our outer content box now extends past our content, and we have the content all styled exactly how we set it up. So there's one more piece missing here, isn't there? We look here, we have this middle banner, and we just want to make sure we get that in there. And that's very quick and easy to do. And here's our div that we created for it. And we just want to put in the image now. We'll save that and go ahead and look at it in our browser now, and there we have it. So we have now, we're matching well. We have our middle ID banner, and that changes with each page. That's why I call it the ID banner. And we have our main content. So that's our left column, and we'll set up our right column in the next lesson.